Okay, I think we should start. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete, and we welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. We also invite your questions and comments. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen, and if you think of a question for the speakers at any point, just type it in there and I will either pose it to our speakers at that time or hold it for discussion at the end of the event. Today, our main presenter is Pera Jimenez. He's a data science advocate at Genie, and he has extensive experience in the development of scientific applications. He's supported by Adrian Salciano. He's the co-founder of Genie and creator of the Genie framework. Adrian will also be taking some questions. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Pera, and let's start today's webinar.
Thank you for the introduction, and hi everyone. Thanks for being here today for this session. Today I will give you an introduction to Genie framework, Genie Builder, and show you how to build an application with it. So let's get started. Genie Builder is a tool for building data-centric web applications in pure Julia. Now, with it, you can build anything from interactive dashboards to browse your data and gather insights to complex applications running AI models and real-time simulations. Genie Builder is tightly integrated with the VS Code IDE. In it, you can find a drag-and-drop editor with which you can build your user interfaces visually, using a large list of components, which you will also be able to customize and set its properties to your liking. Then, when it comes to the backend code, it is written all in Julia using Genie's simple and productive API. Moreover, Genie Builder is built on top of the powerful Genie framework, which is the #1 web development framework in Julia. It provides packages for developing web stack applications like Genie.jl, which is its most well-known package. And then we also have Stipple and Genie Builder for building reactive user interfaces. Moreover, we also have packages for connecting to databases like Searchlight and first-party plugins providing enterprise-level capabilities like authentication, API documentation, etc. Now, for today's webinar, let's set the scenario. So let's say we have some money that we want to invest and we want to improve our decision-making process. For this, having a dashboard to visualize our data and gather insights would be very useful. And so this is what we will be doing. We will build an app like this one, this dashboard here, using Genie Builder. With Genie Builder, we will cover the typical steps in the development of data apps. And so we will start by writing a Julia script with our Julia code to gather and analyze stock data. And after that, we will proceed with the implementation of the dashboard. Here, we will design the interface with the no-code UI editor. And then we will implement the app's logic with Genie's low-code API. Once we are done with the development, we will deploy the app on JuliaHub in just one click. So let's start with the first step, that is getting our stock data. A good source for this type of data is the Yahoo Finance website. And so we will use the Y Finance package that is available for Julia. To use this package, we will just include this package into our script and then specify and start and end dates for the period over which we want to get our data for, and then specify a symbol for the stock that we want to inspect. Then we call the getPrices function with these parameters here and convert the result to a data frame. We will have, as a result, a table with stock data for each day in the period that we have specified. This data has columns with data prices, data price information, and we will look specifically at the closing price at each day. This is what we will be using for our analysis. So we will have the closing price at each day for the specific stock that we want to inspect. Now that we have our data in tabular form, what we will do is write a script to analyze this data. And for this, we will use the script right here, which starts by the importing several packages like data frames, statistics, and dates, besides Y Finance. And then for the first analysis step, since the daily price data can be a little bit noisy, as this blue line here shows, we will look at the moving average as well, which is represented here in this red line. That is, the moving average for each day will give us the average closing price during the previous day. So we define this moving average function, which calculates the moving average of our prices and returns a vector. And then using this helper function, we will insert this new moving average vector as a column in our data frame. After that, after calculating the moving average, we also want to calculate some metrics by looking at the closing price column, and we will extract metrics like the end price, that is the last closing price, the difference in price between the first and the last day, also this difference calculated as a percentage over the last closing price, and the average price over the entire period. These metrics will be returned in a tuple of 4 numbers by this function here. Then we have the main function for the script, which would execute our analysis. It would gather the data, then execute the analysis, and we would be able to see the results in our terminal. Now let's say that we are using this analysis script, and we have used it a few times and it works. So we would like to share it with colleagues, friends, or any other stakeholder. Well, we have several options for this. We could, for instance, share the script with them so that they can run it on their machines, which would require some technical expertise on their side and also having Julia installed, which can be a little bit problematic. Another option would be to create another script that would generate a report, but this would be a static report where data cannot be updated and also results are not interactive. Another possibility would be to, instead of writing Julia script, we could write a Pluto notebook where we would call our data analysis function, and this would generate a report that others can run, and we can also share it online. This is a good option, but the notebook format offers limited customization and extensibility. Moreover, the source code could be exposed with the notebook since we have to share it as well. And finally, the notebook format might not be as intelligible for business users. So as an alternative to these approaches, we could instead turn our data analysis code into a Genie app. That is, take our data analysis script and build a Genie app on top of it. This would be a more powerful option, which will allow us to integrate many sorts of visualizations and interactivity since we will be building on top of web technologies. Moreover, we could easily build the backend logic with Genie's simple reactive API and build the UI visually with Genie Builder. Again, we can leverage the full power of Genie framework to make our app scalable and add enterprise level features. And we can also deploy the application online and share it with anyone with just one link. And finally, we will also be protecting the source code of our application since we would only be sharing the web interface. And so this is the introduction. Now we have figured out how to write our data analysis code for our stock data to get some insights and extract some metrics. And we have motivated why we would like to write a Genie app around our code. So let's just do that. I will proceed to implement the dashboard. So let me switch to the... Oh. So let's hop onto JuliaHub, where we can find Genie Builder. Now, here, after we logged in, we see here in our account that we have Genie Builder available as an application that we can run. And also, if we go to the Projects tab, we can create Genie Builder projects, which we can share with colleagues for collaboration and also deployment. Here we have the project that we have created for this demo, where we have all the files of our app. And if we click Connect, we will open a new tab with the VS Code ID inside of it. This is the main view of Genie Builder. As I said, it's VS Code with Genie Builder as an extension. And if we hide the terminal for now, let me show you around. So in the top left corner, we have the File Explorer, which shows the files in our application. In general, Genie app is formed by two files. One of them is what we call app.jl, which is the file that holds the logic of the app, that is what controls the interactivity of our application. And then we have the app.jl.html, which implements the user interface. In this case, it is empty, as we have not started yet with the design, and we will not be editing this file manually. This code will be generated by the no-code drag and drop editor. Moreover, here we also have the stock analysis script that we wrote before, and we will be importing this one into our Genie app. And besides this, we also have the typical Julia files like the manifest and also the project files. And then here in this bottom left corner, we have the Genie tab, which shows the list of the Genie applications that we have loaded in our system. So close this. Yeah. And here in this sub-tab, we have the list of pages in our application. So if we click on the eye icon, we open the no-code editor for the design of the interface. Here in this main window for the drag and drop editor, we have the logs we will be closing now, and we have the white canvas where we will be designing the UI. To the right, we have the library panel with the components we can use to build our interface, and some other tabs that I will be showing later as I use them. Now, before we start with the design of the interface, the first step would be to install any dependencies that our application needs. So for this, we launch the built-in package manager by right-clicking onto our application and launching the package manager. Here we have a window where we can type in any package we want to install, let's say data frames. Click add, and it will be installed just as if we were installing from the repo. And as you can see here, I have already installed the packages that we needed for today. So now that we are done with the dependencies, we can go back to the app.jl file and set up the initial package loading. As we can see, the Genie framework package comes pre-installed. So let's import the data frames and also the data analysis code. Now with this initial setup of our logic file, I will explain all of this code later on, but this is the initial setup with the package loading. We can proceed with the designing the interface of our application. For this, we go back to the no-code editor, and we can start by setting the layout of our page. We first drag a header onto the canvas, then a 3-column row with another column, since we will have 4 metrics to display, and a 2-column row for the controls and for the plot. Let me edit the title of the page. Let's call it stock analysis. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then we see that here in this column for the controls takes half of the horizontal space, so it's too wide. So let's make it a little bit thinner. For this, we go to the Styles tab, and here we can see the list of CSS classes that adjust the styling of this element. These classes come predefined, and there's a long list to change any properties like width, color, etc. For now, we focus on these 2 classes here that set the width of the column. If we remove them, we see that now the column takes its minimum space, and we can go down to the dimension subtab and adjust the width of this column to something like, let's say, 300 pixels, something like this. So now we have adjusted this, the width of this column. Let's see in the HTML file that all of the code is HTML code is written now in the HTML file, so we don't have to manually edit it. Anytime we add something in the drag and drop editor, it will be here afterwards. So going back to the editor, let's start adding UI components onto our canvas. We start with the big numbers for displaying of the metrics. These are good components for this purpose since they provide us with a label and a number in a large font. Then we will add a select menu to pick the stock that we want to explore, and also some couple of date fields to select the start and end dates of our data. Now, when you select a component here in the Properties tab, you will see a list of properties that you can edit. For instance, here we can set the label, we will call it stocks. And then we have other properties like options that will be the options that are shown once we click on this drop-down menu, and also the data binding. This will be the variable that will store the state of this component. That is when we pick uh, an element from the list that is displayed, this will be stored in here. We will go over this later on, but just so you know what these two fields are about. Then we also have some other properties that come as suggestions here. We can add them. For instance, we could add a color, and we can also remove them. And there's a longer list even that we can pick from. So let's go over each component and set the labels. For this one will be the closing price of the last day. This will be the average, the difference between the first and last day, and the return as a percentage. Then this one already said, this will be start date and the end date. Let me remove this as well. Oh. Okay. Now for the plot, if we go to library, to the section for the charts, we see a long list of charts that we can use in our application. In our case, we will be using the line chart. Genie Builder comes with a comprehensive plot configurator, with which you can configure the traces on the plot, as well as the layout, and also some other configuration settings. Now, for instance, here, we could also switch between different types of plot. So let's say we want to have a bar chart instead of maybe I don't know, a violin plot. As you can see, the plot changes, but also the menu, the fields that we have here in the configurator are also changing and adapting to the type of plot that we have selected. So let's put it back to the line chart. And for now, we have some placeholder data that we will update later on. Now we have set the layout and the components in our application. Let's preview it to see what it looks like. We click here on this monitor button to open a new tab with the preview. And if this looks too small, we can also open new internet browser, that is a new tab in our browser, to see our app. And yeah, this is our app right now. As you can see, when we click on the controls, nothing happens because we haven't added any code to handle this interactivity yet. So yeah, we see the date selectors and so on, but nothing happens yet, and everything has zero value. So what we need to do now is implement the reactive code. That is, we need to add state variables for each one of these components, and then add the code to handle this interactivity. So let's do just that. Let's go to the app.jl file. And here, in this block delimited by this app macro, is where we will implement the reactive code. We will start with the reactive variables. Now, a reactive variable is a variable that monitors its own state and its own value, and when it changes, it notifies other parts in the application so that these parts in the app can react to the changes in the value and make any necessary updates. So we start by defining reactive variables for each of the components in the interface. First, we start with the options for the drop-down menu. That is, we define a stocks array with the list of stocks that we want to be able to select from. We tag it with a out macro, since this will define a read-only variable. That is, from the browser, this variable can only be read. It cannot be changed. Then, for the same drop-down menu, we also define an input variable, so a read-write variable, to store the stock pick. That is, when the user picks a stock on the menu, this will be stored inside of this variable. We tag it with the in macro, since it can be modified from the browser side. Now, these reactive variables, both tagged with the in and out macro, are fully synchronized between the backend, the Julia code, and the browser. So when we change its value in the backend, the new value will automatically be transferred to the browser. And in the case of a writable variable, if we change it from the browser, it will be also automatically transferred to the backend. So there's two-way synchronization. Then we proceed with the variables for the big numbers to display the metrics. We have 4 floats. Notice that we initialize these variables to an appropriate type, that is, in this case, floats, strings, vector strings. And this is necessary so that we can then bind them to the corresponding UI components. After the display of the metrics, we add two strings for the start date and also the end date, which will be used to store the selected date in the date pickers. Now, the plot configurator, the data it uses, that is the data that we can associate with X and Y axis or whatever axis our plot uses, it needs to come as a vector. That is, the plot configurator can pick data from a vector or from the column of a data frame. So in our case, we choose to declare our data that will be exposed to the plot configurator as a data frame that is initialized to empty data frame with the stack, stock, closed timestamp, and moving average columns that are empty for now. We will fill in these values later on. Now, if we look here to the left, that we have our reactive variables for the plots, the date fields, the metrics, and also the select menu. We see here that the variables are already loaded into memory. That is because they appear here in the bindings. And we could go to we could go to each one of the components and bind each one to their corresponding variable. But before we proceed with that, let's also finish this part of the reactive code and implement the handler. Because what we want to have is anytime we pick a new stock or select a new start or end date, we want to grab new data from Yahoo Finance and update the display of the metrics and the chart. For this, we will implement a reactive handler. This handler is implemented with the onChange macro. This macro watches a list of variables, and when any of these variables changes in value, it will execute a snippet of code. For this handler, we are watching the isReady variable, which is a boolean that changes to true once the page is finished loading. We do this because when we first access the page, before we perform an interaction with it, we already want to have some interesting data instead of looking at all zeros. Then we are also watching the selected stock variable, which will be the one modified when we pick a new stock in the menu, and the start and end dates for the date pickers. So when any of these changes, we will do the following. We will call the getPrices function with the updated parameter values and convert the result to a data frame and add a new column with the moving average of the pricings. We do all of this in a single line using the pipe operator because we only want to update the prices variable once. As I mentioned earlier, anytime we change the value of this prices variable, its value will be transferred to the browser. And in the case of data frames, if they are quite large, this can be a little bit time consuming. So we do this just once instead of having 3 separate operations. Then for the metrics displays, we do the same. We call the metrics function and update the values of each one of the metrics variables, which will be automatically updated in the browser. So now that we have defined the logic to handle all interactivity in our application, we can go back to the drag and drop editor and pick each component and bind it to their corresponding variable. To do this, here we see that, for instance, for the number, we could set it manually, but if we click on the lightning button, oh, sorry, I need to refresh first the page so that the new reactive variables are loaded. Okay, and now I need to stop this one. Okay. So now I can set it to the closing price, the difference as well, to the period difference. Sorry, period difference. This one was the average. And this one is the return as a percent. As you can see, when we select a number to display here, a variable, we can only see numerical variables because we had declared them as floats earlier on. So these menus will filter the variables that we have declared by their appropriate type. Then for the stocks, we will set the options. As you can see, it automatically picks the stocks array. And for the data binding, we will be storing it in the selected stock variable. Then for the dates, again, we set the binding to the start date. and for the end date, we set it to the end date. Now, these two components here are actually composite components. That is, they are two in one. They are formed by an input field and also a date picker that is nested inside. So we need to set the bindings of both of the components. To do this, we go to the Layers tab, where we can see a tree view of all of the components in our application. So we pick the branch for our date fields and expand it until we reach the end. Here we have the date picker, and so we just bind it to the appropriate variable. And we do the same for the other one. Yeah, end date. And okay, let me double check that I said the correct one. Okay, good. So now we can go back. And now that we have the metrics and also the controls, let's proceed with the configuration of the chart. For this, we first have our first trace, which would be the closing price. So we call it close. And then we again repeat the bindings process. We bind the x-axis to the timestamp column of the prices table. And then we bind the y-axis, the variable that we want to plot on the y-axis, to the closing price. As you can see, this already shows up on our chart. Now let's add a second trace for the moving average. And let's call it MA20, because this would be the moving average over 20 days. So here for the x and y, we set again the timestamp for the x, and for the y, we set the moving average. And to finish this plot, let's go to the layout and edit the title out so that doesn't come with the default one. And now this is it for the application. If now we should have finished our interactive app. Let's go preview it in the browser. And yeah, you see it right here. It's already been updated. And we can pick new stocks, pick new dates to adjust the prices that are shown here. And we can also interact with the plots. Well, just that. And this is it. As you can see, this has been a pretty, I would say, smooth and simple process, which started with the definition of our data analysis code, in this case, our code to grab stock data and get some metrics. Then we imported this code into Genie Builder. We designed the user interface using the drag and drop editor, wrote the reactive code to handle the interactivity. That is, we defined reactive variables for each one the components and implemented a handler to update the data. And finally, we bound the reactive variables to each component in order to have a final working application. Genie Builder comes with several more interesting features, like for instance, we have a bindings panel where we can, instead of dropping components onto the canvas, we can drop reactive variables so that when we drop a variable here, we have a suggestion or the kind of components that we can use for this kind of data, which can be helpful for discoverability. Moreover, in case we are working with some complex components and we want to edit their code, instead of having to go to the HTML file and look for the component there, we can go to the code tab and edit its code right here. Any change we make, then we click apply, and its source code will be updated. Besides this, we have an AI assistant integrated right here into the right panel. We have an assistant to edit the interface and also another assistant to answer questions about the Genie Builder and Genie framework using our documentation. Let's now test the UI helper. For instance, let me select this row and let's ask it for a style change. For instance, like give this row a thick dash border. You hit Ask AI, and this will take a few seconds since it needs to connect to the LLM API. But yeah, as you can see, now it's done. We can preview the result of what the AI assistant did. We can revert the changes or we can keep them. In this case, we keep them, and if we want, we can also undo the changes with Ctrl-Z. And this is it for the application. Now it's finished, it's working, and it's ready to be deployed. In order to deploy it, we will go to a JuliaHub, to our project, switch here to the source mode, and okay, I had already deployed this one, but here it would say deploy. Once you click the deploy button, you can configure your deployment with the specifications of your application and also set other properties like maybe you want the login screen, limit the accessibility, etc. Once the application is deployed, you can access it um, on a link that is automatically generated, and this is the one that we have deployed for this session today. Okay, and now this is it for the portion of. I forgot to ask if anyone has any questions, but well, I just have 2 more minutes, so let me end with this. And yeah, this is for the application, as you can see, a simple process. Now, if you would like to know more about Genie, you can visit our website at genieframework.com. You can also read our documentation at learn.genieframework.com, where you will also find code examples and demo applications. And we also have a Discord server where we will be more than glad to talk to you about Genie or help you out with anything you might need. Now, in terms of availability for Genie Builder, well, it will be generally available in a few weeks. And in the meantime, if you would like to help us with some beta testing, please reach out to us at info@genieframework.com. In terms of pricing, once it's available on JuliaHub, we have several tiers, one for individual users, which starts with a free trial of 10 hours, and then you will have to pay by usage, that is by the hour, with a usage cap of $15 a month. And then for teams and enterprises wanting to use Genie Builder, it will be a seat-based annual subscription. And for more information, you can contact sales@juliahub.com. And well, this is it for my part on the talk. Thank you all for your attention. Now, if there's any questions, any discussion that anyone might want to have, I'm here to answer them.
Yeah, we have a question. Can you add icons to the value boxes?
Can you add icons to the value boxes? Yes. Let me see. 1 second. By value boxes, do they mean, I guess they mean this, there's big numbers. For instance, here you have the icon property. Okay, you can hit here, and then we have an icon selector, from which you can select any kind of icon from the material design icons. And yeah, this field has this, and many others have this as well. Like for instance, I believe this one also has it. Like, okay, not this one, but I know this one has it. Yeah, so you can indeed add icons on a per component basis. Just, of course, not all of them have the icon property, but you can always go into the source code if you are inclined to do so and add them. That shouldn't be necessary.
Okay. Thanks. There's one more question. How can we activate HTTPS for Genie Builder application?
In that regard, HTTPS, well, I guess I don't really know the answer for this because this on Julia, I know usually you place Genie Builder behind the reverse proxy that handles the HTTPS for you. Okay, so would be the way to do it. On JuliaHub, HTTPS is already enabled by default. So as you can see here in this my deployed app, it's already using HTTPS. So you won't need to do anything extra in order to have secure connections to your application.
Yeah, that's the best way, Pera. So just to confirm. So you could technically set up a certificate into http.jl, which is the server that powers Genie. But the best way is to use a proxy like Nginx or some other server and configure the HTTPS there. So that's the recommended way and comes out of the box on JuliaHub. Yeah. Okay. There's another question. I can read it. How about deep customizations of UI, like for enterprise applications?
So what kind of custom? Well, you can edit your, if you have predefined style that you would like to have for your applications, you can edit the CSS files of the app. Here we have we can set the CSS styles here and customize your application to your liking. We plan to expand these features with theming and so on, but for now, I believe this would be the way to do it. You can also, of course, for each component, change its styling from this style menu here and do anything, any customization you would like to have.
Another question is if JuliaHub is required in order to use Genie Builder.
Well, as of now, we are launching Genie Builder on JuliaHub. But if anyone is interested in having an on-prem version, please reach out to us and we can talk about it.
All right. Another question is if Genie apps can be deployed on their own servers.
Well, you can deploy on your own servers, of course, because you have access to your code. So yes, definitely you can deploy on your own servers. In our case, we suggest deploying on JuliaHub because it's very easy. You just need to hit one click. But of course, you can download your code of your app and deploy it anywhere you would like to. If you check our documentation, there's guides for deployment on several services using Docker containers or directly on server.
Thank you. Is it using Bootstrap 5?
Okay, I don't know that one. Maybe Adrian, you know that one.
No, we're not using Bootstrap 5. So Genie used to have Bootstrap 5 or Bootstrap support at some point, but now it's no longer using it. However, you can add Bootstrap to the application if you want to help you with the styles, or you can add something else like tailoring, for example. We've been recently experimenting with it, and that works quite well. So you have multiple options in terms of UI themes that you want to add to your app. There's a question that I don't really understand. Can users input some data like with read line?
Let me see.
Any idea, Pera?
Can users input some data and like, oh, so you mean no? Well, I don't know. That would require being able to work from the terminal. So I don't think that's possible. Like read line, you mean like when you ask the user to input string of text from the terminal? I don't think that's possible yet. Well, I mean, this is meant for a interactive web application that is should be interacted with from the browser. So what you would have in this case would be a text field here in your page into which you can input some data.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe in parallel, an application could take input from the command line, and then you could display it in the web UI.
Yeah,
yeah, it's not something that we've encountered. But anyway, if you have more details or if you want to look into this, for example, hop on to the Discord and give us more details, and we'll try to help if we have such a use case. Can Genie Builder handle a multi-page web app?
Yes, it can. You can define here. Oh yeah, I didn't mention this. Like here at the end of our code, we have the definition for the routes. That is the pages that we want to render at each URL. And here you can define multiple pages and edit them. Although, as of now, Genie Builder only supports editing one, I believe. But we are working on supporting multiple page editing.
These were all the questions. If anybody
We
else
have some more time. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to type in.
Okay.
How much traffic?
Yeah.
How much traffic can JuliaHub handle? I guess this one would be for maybe Deep to answer. I believe there should not be like Genie is a pretty fast server, like it performs at a high level. So, and I don't think there should be any issues with the JuliaHub side.
Yeah, so I mean, hosting on JuliaHub should be pretty standard in the sense that you get your own server instance, which by default is 8 gigabytes. So it's a pretty good server for running well, data applications. And Deep, if you wanna give more details.
Yeah. So the way we're setting up the hosting and deployment on JuliaHub, it's going to be based on the machine configuration you choose. And we're using AWS behind the scenes. So I don't have an answer on like max traffic, but the machine type you choose is going to, speed up or slow down the robustness of your app. And then you're going to be paying for requests. So essentially traffic. It's like 16 cents for every 10,000 requests. So as your app usage scales, so does the pricing. And it'll handle, whatever AWS can handle, which should be more than enough, I hope.
All right. I don't know if
All
anybody
right.
else any more questions.
Yeah. As mentioned by Pera, the beta version will be available soon. And if you are interested to sign up, please reach out. Also, I'll share a link where you can get a preview. And after the webinar, I will be sharing the recording of the webinar and also some resources that will help you get started with Genie. So thank you, everyone. And thanks for the participation and your patience. Thank you, Vera, Adrian, and Deep.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.